Our next speaker is one of the top global gurus in organizational culture, sharing how to engage leaders in leading change is April Callis-Birchmeier.
Thank you, Ed. Have you ever thought, why won't my leader help more in leading change? I don't know about you, but I've had this thought. And if you've had that thought, you're really not alone. I have to tell you that I'm an organizational change management expert. And one of the things that I work with is helping organizations and their people move from the current state to the future state. And it's not an easy thing to do. And when we think about changes, changes are all over the place. We know change is constant, but some changes actually need some change management tools and techniques to help people move from that current state to the future state. And we need our leaders to be engaged in that effort. We need leaders to assist in this change. So let me just start by sharing with you ways that I have worked with these leaders, worked with leaders in your associations, worked with leaders in organizations to help them understand the importance of their role in leading successful change in the organization. Changes are made up of all sorts of types of changes. We have system changes, such as a big system implementation or a system upgrade. There are restructuring changes where we restructure the entire organization. We have mergers and acquisitions, and many times we have to respect the organization that's being acquired and actually work on incorporating that culture into our own culture if we're the merging acquisition organization. And then one of the ways that I see change happening is in unplanned changes, such as a pandemic. So I want to always work with my leaders, because when I have leaders involved in the change and they are active and visible, then my change is much simpler because their people know what to do to be able to get from that current state where they're starting and where they're having a struggle to the future state, which is the benefit of the change. So first thing I like to do is I work with that leader. Sometimes we call that leader sponsor, but I like to communicate with that leader and talk about the vision of the change and develop a relevant and relatable story about this change. Now, a relevant, relatable story is not the bullet points that we sometimes get from, a brochure, or sometimes from a document that a vendor might send us about a system upgrade. Seamless integration of system. It's like, ugh, what does that mean? I think when we're talking about a relevant and relatable story, we're talking about something that actually is relatable, that people can understand. We talk about relatable topics all the time, our kids, our cats, our homes, our families. And I also think relevant. It has to be relevant to the change that's happening. We could have the cutest story on earth, but if it's not relevant to this change, if it doesn't make sense to people, it's not a great story to explain that change. So I work with leaders to develop that vision and think about how are we going to describe this change in a way that's helpful to everybody. Then I want to build a kickoff just for that leader, just for my sponsor or leader that is going to help with this change. Now, my sponsor or leader generally thinks, I don't need a kickoff. I'm a leader. I know what to do. I've been in this organization. But I honestly feel that the kickoff is important, because when our leaders have a kickoff, they suddenly recognize the importance of their role, and I can give them kind of a preview of what we expect and how we expect them to engage. When I can give them this kickoff, they suddenly have a clear vision of how they're supposed to help. Because quite frankly, most leaders are what Peggy described as a status symbol, busy. Most leaders are really worried about their time. They have a lot of responsibility. And many times they feel like they don't have the time to do other than show up at the project kickoff, at the big change kickoff, and then they'll show up when it's time to go have a party and celebrate. But that's not helpful to the change, and that won't get us in the successful adoption that we need to move toward to be able to successfully adopt the change. So I think it's really critical to have this kickoff. I also want to establish a communication cadence and a candor with them. So my communication cadence, I actually developed because I had a leader who was extremely busy. She couldn't meet with me 1 hour a week. She couldn't meet with me a half an hour a week. She couldn't meet with me at all, in fact. So I noticed that she and I were going to the same meeting once a week, and it took 15 minutes to walk from our office to that office. And I developed a tool called the Engaging Leaders Brief. And I'll put this tool here with our website. But what I want to tell you about the Engaging Leaders Brief is it gave them such a brief but brilliant way of envisioning all of the communication that had to happen that week, all of the activities they needed to be involved with, and some things that they needed to keep their eye on. And these were bullet points that I put together, 3 or 4 per section, so that they would have an idea of what they needed to do to lead change. I also ensured that when it came to what they need to keep their eye on, it was something that was a risk, but not such a big risk that I wanted it in the risk registry. Then we gave them what's coming next week in terms of communication, where you need to be next week in terms of activities, and celebrations. So this was a fantastic tool for my very busy leader. I also make sure that I have a collaborative environment so that we can create communication that appeals to their strengths. I do a DISC assessment or strength finders, and then I look at their strengths and I think, gosh, here are their strengths, and I can now leverage these for things like video interviews that then I edit and send out on a weekly basis, or maybe even an entire video summit where I have many leaders and I have their videos, maybe 4 to 5 minutes, and I put them together in a summit format so that our employees, our association members, our organization can see these leaders, hear them talking, and it's not just something that you can catch only if you're there in person. It's something that's designed to last a long time. So I think that's a fantastic tool. One of the things I also like to do is to explain to the leader how we're planning to follow up so that we can focus on that success. So I'm going to give them candid feedback about how things are being received and where we are so that we can have success together. Because engaging leaders is so essential. We can't achieve true change without our leaders actually knowing what they need to do. So we can't ignore them and just assume that they understand as leaders what they should be doing. Helping them step by step along the way and really developing this plan is essential. I would love to help you and your members with their leadership challenges, and I would also love to assist with learning how to conduct change management from within. And if you have folks who are interested in certifying in change management, you let me know because I want to help them. Ready, set, change. Thank you so much.
Thanks, April. Appreciate that.